Ready to dive into custom water cooling but unclear about what parts you might need? Check out Thermaltake's new M360 Plus RGB kit. Featuring a D5 pump res combo, 16mm hard tube, Pacific C Pro fittings, and the best RGB implementation on the market, the M360 Plus fits all mainstream Intel and AMD sockets and is fully expandable as your system evolves. Check out the link in the video description to learn more. Razer's new 2018 Blade is in the house, and as with the 2016 version, there hasn't been a product to come through the office in a while that excites me quite as much. I'm not sure what it is about this device in particular that's different from other generational advances, but whenever the Razer lineup gets an update, I'm eager to see what exactly they've managed to pack into this tiny shell this time. I was talking with a friend of mine the other day about the new Blade and what specs it was rocking along with the size and construction. And his two-word answer pretty much summed it up. Technology, man. Now, I didn't review the 2017 Blade because that was basically an identical machine to the 2016, with a GTX 1060 and a bump from Skylake Mobile to Kaby Lake Mobile. Performance saw an extremely modest gain, not nearly enough to justify a purchase for someone who already owned the former. Plus, the form factor was exactly the same, with the same matte black unibody structure, same 14-inch screen with a heavy dose of bezel, same keyboard and trackpad layout, and same cooling solution. But with 2018's completely revamped model, Razer has remedied quite a few of the issues that were the main complaints people had with its laptop lineup for the past few years. First and foremost, while the smaller Blade Stealth and the larger Blade Pro have featured screens ranging from 12 to 17 inches, the mainstream vanilla Razer Blade has been stuck at 14 inches for years. That's not to say that's necessarily a bad thing. I quite like the 3200 by 1800 IGZO touchscreen on my older laptop, and the design of the monitor housing was reminiscent of one of my favorite older units, my 2013 MacBook Pro. But as bezel started to become a four-letter word in the industry, the beefy borders around the glossy screen started to look quite dated. Now, Razer has taken the Blade screen and pushed it out to within 4mm of the side edges, and only slightly more on top to accommodate the webcam. This results in 1.6 inches of additional diagonal run for an overall size of 15.6 inches. The chin remains about the same, but this is done to support the sturdy and silky smooth hinge, along with holding the brains of the 1920 by 1080 144Hz IPS matte screen. This is the middle option of three different screen configurations you can choose from, with a 60Hz 1080p as the base config and a 4K 60Hz touchscreen coming soon. All three come color calibrated from the factory, and I must say Razer did a fantastic job with this. I didn't make a single change to any display setting after powering it on for the first time. The screens also all cover 100% of the sRGB color space, making them a great choice for photo or video editors on the go. Although I've done some rendering benchmarks, as you'll see in a minute, I haven't yet sat down with this machine for a marathon editing session. But with events like CES and Computex, I'm sure that kind of use case is in the cards. Without referencing specs, the panel passes the eyeball test with flying colors, and I think I'm definitely more of a matte screen guy than a glossy screen guy at this point, especially when it comes to laptops. The 144Hz refresh rate, albeit without any adaptive sync technology like G-Sync, works wonders to smooth out gameplay versus 60Hz panels, and it's immediately apparent when you load up games with frame rates over, say, 100, and you don't see any of the crazy tearing that I experience even on my desktop monitor. I still did see some tearing when frame rates dipped under 60, but that's to be expected without G-Sync. As mentioned, the top bezel of the screen houses a 720p webcam, and I honestly don't have all that much to say about it. At this point, I would really like to see high-end laptops like this step up to 1080p as standard equipment. After all, if I can get a 24 megapixel front-facing camera in a cell phone, why am I stuck with this garbage on a $2,500 laptop? Moving down to the keyboard and body, Razer has implemented significant changes here as well, although dimensions have remained almost identical. In fact, if you lay them on top of each other, the only real difference you can see is at the corners, where the old rounded edges have become kind of squared off angles. Height-wise, the main platform, again, is almost exactly the same, and in total, with the lid closed, the Blade only rises 16.8 millimeters off the table. For squeezing in not only a significantly larger screen, but also heavily upgraded internals, this is an engineering feat. Razer has become synonymous with their Chroma software and RGB lighting implementation, and of course, we see that on the keyboard here as well, with a very familiar feel and your standard color cycling effects. This, for instance, is Wave, so get excited for that. The chiclet keys seem to have a little less travel than the 2016 model, and my first few keystrokes bottomed them out pretty hard actually, although typing is still pleasant, and you do get used to the feel after really not too long. I think this is just a compromise you make when you opt for a thin and light, where you know you're not getting anywhere near a mechanical switch feel. The keys are also slightly reconfigured in the bottom right corner, with the shift button shrinking considerably to allow for full-size arrow keys. In order to kind of Tetris these things together in this layout, Razer has moved the second function key all the way out to the edge of the row, which kind of threw me for a loop the first few times I went to arrow right and instead hit FN. I think ultimately I would like the arrow keys to be pushed all the way out for easy orientation while touch typing, but again, this isn't a deal breaker, it's just kind of a small complaint. The main chassis also has very little flex to it, speaking to the sturdy build quality and all-metal unibody. Razer has moved the power button off-center to the right speaker grille, and it has almost zero travel, which again is something I guess I'll need to get used to, but seeing as how I honestly hardly ever press the power button as the laptop stays on most of the time, it's not really a big deal. The speakers are very similar, if not identical, to last generations, meaning they're sufficient for laptop speakers without standing out for any reason in particular. What is a big deal, and what will take a lot longer to get used to, is this redesigned trackpad. Razer has kept their best-in-class all-glass tracking surface in place, and as with the 2016 model, I have zero complaints about moving around a pointer with it. It's still silky smooth and it's still extremely accurate. But for 2018, the surface is about 50% larger, and Razer has eliminated the physical buttons for left and right click. This makes it much more akin to the newer MacBooks, where the entire surface becomes your button, and it has vertical travel to it once you press down. You can also right-click by moving your finger over to the bottom right side, so although the functionality remains the same, the mechanism is quite different. This took me a day or two to get used to when I was accustomed to using my thumb for button actuation, and now it just seems easier to, instead of using my thumb, use my pointer finger instead. I think overall I'm really enjoying the large trackpad surface more than I miss the buttons being there, so it's a net positive for me, but at times I do miss my buttons. I/O on the Blade remains excellent for a thin and light, although as with the last generation, there is no Ethernet port, and your connectivity is limited to AC Wi-Fi and Bluetooth unless you add on a USB module. You get 3 USB 3.1 Type A ports along with a Thunderbolt USB-C, and there's also a mini DisplayPort and HDMI 2.0 port for video out. The charging port has been redesigned and is now both more difficult to unplug and also to replug, which is both a blessing and a curse, I guess, if you think about it. The external power brick is significantly larger than the older one, making it a little more bulky and awkward when you're on the go. But that's actually not without a good reason, as the Blade's battery has been bumped up from 70 to 80 watt hours. This has led to a 21% increase in battery life, as in my rundown torture test, the 2018 Blade lasted a good amount longer. For this test, I leave Unigine Heaven just looping with the screen on and in full brightness mode, and the laptop unplugged until it just dies. As a bonus side note, the 2016 Blade score in this test was almost identical to what it was 2 years ago, meaning that the battery saw almost no degradation over that time. Now we get to talk about performance. And with its upgraded internals, it's no surprise that the 2018 Blade put the smackdown on the 2016 model in every category. The 2018 features a 6-core, 12-thread Intel i7-8750H processor, the brand new Coffee Lake mobile chip that turbos up to 4.1 GHz under load. And in fact, when doing my testing, I did see clock speeds hit this mark and stick there without bouncing around due to thermals. However, that's not to say that things didn't get toasty. During Blender rendering, CPU temps peaked up over 90°C, and that's with the 2 turbine-style fans blasting away at full speed. This made for a very loud few hours for me, and I can definitely say that the Blade gets much louder in this regard than previous generations. It's probably due to the fact that the 6-core chip requires not only more power, but also more cooling, and the fans can only do so much without cranking up to 100%. I saw or heard similar results when gaming, when the GTX 1070 Max Q powered through Doom, Fortnite, and Far Cry. Frame rates were impressive overall, and with a 1080p screen, a 1070 is going to be overkill for most tasks. You can also get the Blade with a 1060 instead, and if you do, I would expect gaming performance to be more in line with what I was getting from the 2016 model. Temps on the 1070 were actually much better than on the CPU, as it hovered in the 70 to 72 Celsius range while gaming, even for long periods. One thing that I'll mention was that I was seeing some crazy CPU frame time spikes in Doom, making the gameplay very choppy. FPS was spiking up to 130 or 140 and then cratering down to 20 or 30 very rapidly, making gameplay choppy and uneven and unpleasant to say the least. The good news here is that I don't think this was an issue with the Blade, as I found numerous forum threads dedicated to trying to solve this issue people were experiencing in this game with desktop hardware, meaning that this is a Doom issue, not a Razer issue. Moving over to computational tasks and real-world rendering, again we see the 2018 model take a commanding lead in every test, including Adobe Premiere 4K exporting. Great news for me, as I will be giving this thing a workout in that area over the next few years. The 2018 Razer Blade is an impressive laptop, boasting desktop-level performance, a large, accurate 144Hz screen, accurate and smooth touchpad, and a form factor that embarrasses most other similarly spec'd machines. It's solidly built, feels great to use, and has improved battery life over last generation without being really any larger. Maybe a little. While the webcam is mediocre and it takes a little bit of time to get used to the keyboard feel and slightly reconfigured button layout, the Blade will be my go-to for on-the-go video editing and gaming, as well as browsing around Reddit while lazing on the sofa. The biggest letdown is probably the noise from the fans, but this is something that you honestly might not even notice if you work or play with headphones on anyway. Overall, a fantastic addition to the Razer lineup and a huge technological leap over last year's offering. So let me know if you plan on purchasing a new Razer Blade down below in the comments. Also, if you'd like to support BPS Customs directly and be a part of our growing Discord community, you can check out my new Patreon link down below in the description. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, took something away from it, and if you did, get subscribed so you don't miss anything upcoming on the channel. I'll see you guys next time.